Okay, so the topic of this interview is going to be about solar power. Um, so, whether you know it or not, there's an economic trend that solar or installing solar panels and manufacturing them has actually become fairly cheap compared to what it has been in the past.
Interesting.
So there is an what I think a opportunity for people or business owners, specifically commercial business owners that have a need for a lot of power to invest in solar panels and not have to pay for energy and have their own source of energy now that it's fairly cheap to do this. So my hypothesis is commercial building owners are missing the opportunity to have cheaper power through the use of now much cheaper solar panels. Um, so the first question I would have for you would be: do you think other people besides commercial business owners have the need for solar power?
Yeah, so I would say that, like, just as humans on the earth, that everyone has a need for solar power. Like being an engineer myself, I'm obviously really interested in technology, and clean energy is like a huge problem that we're kind of struggling to tackle. And if solar panels are like, really affordable and a cheap, viable option for your average citizen to get and add to their house, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be something that everybody should get in on, because it's ultimately going to save you money in the long run, especially if there's not much upfront cost associated with it.
Okay. Then with that, who do you think specifically would benefit from solar power, or since you said essentially everyone, who could benefit the most or the least from solar power?
Well, obviously, I agree with you that large commercial entities would probably benefit the most. Power plants, manufacturing plants, they produce a lot of waste with traditional means of energy. So if they were to employ solar power and have zero emissions or anything like that, I think that that would probably be the biggest footprint reduction, kind of, in terms of the impact that we as a whole are having on the environment.
Okay. Um, then the next question would be: do you think solar power is a legitimate need for commercial business? And keyword being need. Do you think it is now becoming a requirement?
Um, well, I don't think it's a requirement, just because there are still plenty of other sources available, and I mean, in many cases more economical. So I wouldn't call it a requirement, but if we were to differentiate between need and requirement, I think we do need to sort of go in that direction, if we want to be around for much longer and not
Yeah.
completely destroy the environment that we live in.
So um, the next two questions are: can we function without it in the short term, and in the long term? Um, so how long do you think uh, this need versus requirement shifts over to you know being a requirement?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that for the long term, that I mean, clean energy in general, I think, is a requirement for sure in the long term. I would say that solar energy is probably at the top of that list of like means of acquiring clean energy, just because, I mean, the sun is the largest free source of energy that anyone can have access to. So if it's the most economic way to obtain free energy, then I would say it should become a requirement very soon.
Okay. Um, so switching gears a little bit, do you think that having solar panels uh, affects all types of commercial business. So would different types of businesses have different effects from having like a solar panel? Like, would a 20-story bank building benefit more than a 2-story construction firm, or vice versa?
Well, I mean, I think the benefit is all the same, regardless of like who is using the energy, just because it provides the same advantage. But I do think that a larger building that draws more energy is obviously going to produce more of an impact like on the environment. So I mean, because a large skyscraper being powered by solar panels would cut energy consumption on like a citywide scale, and as opposed to like a smaller like residential sized building, I mean it would still have a good effect, but it wouldn't obviously be on such a large scale as a big building.
Okay. So, why do you personally think commercial buildings need or do not need solar power? So, in your opinion, do you think they should start switching over or not, and why?
I mean, yeah, so I think that they should, and I don't think that necessarily means that they can, because the reality of the situation is that capitalism kind of dominates everything. So if it's not economic for a company to switch to solar power, for example, like if it costs way too much to install the panels, then they're not going to do it. But um, I would say that, in my opinion, yeah, I think they do need to, and I mean, I think that they'll be more likely to, for sure, if it's more accessible in terms of cost.
Okay. Then, how do you think commercial businesses or businesses in general can benefit from having solar power? So, not just in a financial aspect, but let's say a business goes all solar and they advertise that they're,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
completely sustainable.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, going green has sort of become more of a trend now that the technology is kind of more there. So like, it could work to any company's advantage from a marketing standpoint to say that they are um, using clean energy, solar power, because I mean people like to hear that companies are going green, but they don't necessarily. Um, so the people who don't care about like green energy aren't gonna care either way if a company's not using it, but they could potentially like increase their market if they get the people who do feel passionate about it and like don't want to give their business to companies that aren't using green energy. So I think from a marketing standpoint, it would be a big advantage.
Okay, so then the next question is kind of counter that. How do you think uh, trying to install solar panels could be a problem for a business?
Um, I think the only way, really, that it would have any sort of adverse effect on business is if it somehow constitutes like a conflict of interest. So, like, let's say you do business with oil companies, or your local power plant which uses gas turbines or whatever. They hear that you suddenly go green, and that's obviously going to be detrimental to your business relationship with them. So I mean, it could impact a company in that way, definitely.
Okay, so last two questions. Did you, before this interview, know that solar panels have actually become cheaper?
I had heard something about it, but I honestly don't know that much information on the topic. So I would say no.
Okay. All right. That's the end of the interview. Thank you.